Well, I was born in Cottage Grove, and Cottage Grove is just off of Shepherd Drive to the right, a little past White Oak Bow. That's where I was born. What else would you like to know?
Tell me your mom and dad's names.
Dad's name is John Stanley Zabrowski, and mom's name was Willie Mae Choate.
And tell me about your grandfather's farm. Did y'all go out there?
My grandfather owned about, they came from Ohio. He owned a bar in Ohio, and they sold that and came down here and bought approximately 500 acres in Fairbanks, and they had they started out with a real farm. Corn was the most thing that I heard about. And then eventually it turned into a dairy farm. And they had cows. And when I was little, well, first off, they gave each one of their children 10 acres and a house. And when I was little, we went over to Grandpa's house, and they had this barn and all that stuff across the road from where they live there. And they had these cows, and I can remember one that was a longhorn, was pretty mean, and I can remember my father telling me that, no, don't mess with him, and so on. And then I remember they had some milking machines that milked the cows, and
What do you remember about your grandpa?
that he was an invalid. He was in bed most of the time. In fact, I only seen him in a wheelchair a couple of times while I was there. I do remember very well that one time when we were living out there, I was about 3, I guess, and we had cats, and we had this kind of a rain barrel, and when I was small, I picked up this cat and I stuck this cat in the rain barrel and dunked him and this, that, and the other. My father seen me doing that, and he dunked me in there. Of course, I promptly told my grandfather, and my grandfather chewed his ass out real good. That would not happen again.
What about your grandmother?
Well, my grandmother was mostly the biggest thing I really remember about her, and I don't want to say anything. She was a yakety yak kind of person, and she was the disciplinarian type. But she always had good buttermilk. She really did. She always had good buttermilk. And that's how I learned to love buttermilk, was when I would stay there, and every once in a while I'd get to stay there for maybe 3 or 4 days. And she would give me plenty of buttermilk, and boy, and I loved it. It was cold. And it was, homemade stuff, because, they had the cow, and all that. And I remember very well that she tried to teach me to be right-handed. It never worked. I'm still left-handed. But when I was little, she would always make me try to drink my drink with my right hand and try to eat with my right hand and all that kind of stuff. And like I said, it didn't work.
Okay, tell me about the other grandparent, I guess, was uncle. Tell me about him.
Well, actually, I had some other grandparents. I had my mother's mother, and she was married to I never knew, supposedly my real grandfather. I don't think. Because he was dead before I was born. And I had a step-grandfather. His name was, and I always called him Uncle Forrest. I don't know why that I got the uncle's part, but, you know, it was Uncle Forrest. And he was a pretty good old boy. I was pretty small then, 4 or 5. And anyway, later in life, I found out that very probably Uncle was my real grandfather. And anyway, he taught me everything I knew, or I know, as far as to have shit in your neck and how to do things.
What did he do? What did he do?
Well, I'll never forget the first time that that I got in a fight with one of my cousins, and this guy was a little older than me, and I started to take off, kind of running, and he made me come back and fight this guy. And then it happened a second time with another guy that was a lot bigger than me and a couple years older. And this was out in the street, and I'll never forget this, because this was the real turning point as far as I'll never be afraid of anybody anymore. And that was, he said, "Boy, if you run from that guy, I'm going to whoop your ass till you can't sit down." So now you get back here and you fight him, and you said, "And I'm going to stand right here to be sure that everything's fair." And I came back and I whooped that big old boy's ass like it was a drum. And I never was after that. It didn't make no difference how big they were. That's just the way it was.
What did Uncle do for a living?
Okay, me and Uncle, to start with, in fact, he taught me a couple things. Several things. He taught me how to play poker. Taught me how to count before I went to school. Taught me how to play casino. Taught me how to play solitaire. And he also, at that time, he was in his 60s. He had a horse and buggy, and we sold ice cream. And I went with him to sell ice cream, and that's how I learned to count. Was when we sold ice cream, well, I would make change. And I was about 5 then. And he would leave me with the horse and buggy and go get him a cup of coffee. And I watched the horse. And
How old were you
5. Then we also, that was like during the summertime. Well, during the spring, we would sell watermelons. And we would go down the street, and he had a bell that he would ring, and he would holler, "Watermelon for sale." And we would go down in the black neighborhoods and just have a great time.
How old were you when Uncle died?
well, let's see. I'm trying to think. I was probably, and again, I'm kind of guessing, but I was probably about 23 or 24 years old. Yeah. He was in his 70s when he died. Me and your mom was married. But he had lost his leg. He was tearing down a building, and a piece of tin punched a little hole in his leg, and it right there. And he didn't take care of it real well, and it got infected. And after 2 or 3 years, they finally had to take the leg off, and of course that was just a preempt to. It wasn't long that he passed away. It wasn't long that he passed away.
Okay, tell me about.
But he was a very, very strong. In fact, he was probably the strongest character builder in my life. Period. I always, that guy made me afraid of nothing. Him and God.
Well, how about one other person? What did Elwood teach you?
Elwood was just a fun guy. And he taught me a lot about just pure life, how you can, have fun and enjoy things. And he and I were great buddies, fishing, and we'd done a lot of fishing together. And of course, we'd done a lot of drinking together too. But just a great guy. And just, he had a lot of good common sense. He and I clicked real well.
Okay. Take me back to, tell me about you being a teenager and what kind of things did you do when you were a teenager?
Well, probably before I was a teenager. I'll tell you about a Christmas we had one time. There was 4 of us boys, and we got 1 football for Christmas. And damn glad to have it. I mean, really, we were glad to have it, and just thought that was the greatest thing in the world. We all went out and played with it, right in the damn wintertime. And I can remember a lot of times I had big dreams of being a place kicker, and I would go out, and there was 2 pine trees in this vacant lot next door to us, and I'd go out there and I'd spend hours out there kicking that damn ball through them pine trees. And I don't know, hell, I was on the swimming team in junior high school. I caught the cooties. Never forget that. Mother sent us down to the barbershop. There was 2 of us that got them. She sent us down to the barbershop. We got burr haircuts. Then we came back home, and she put kerosene on our head. That took care of the cooties. Damn near took care of us, but it took care of the cooties too. I can remember when I got a baseball team together from the neighborhood guys. And I don't know, I just seemed to be kind of the leader. And I know that sounds kind of like bragging, but I guess I was the one to get off my ass and do things. And we went down to the woods. I gathered up 3 or 4 guys, and we went down to the woods, and we chopped down 4 pine trees, little pine trees, and we brought them back up to the vacant lot, put them in the ground, and we spread chicken wire over them. That was our backstop. And then the guy across the street had a tractor, and we got him to come over and grade the lot and build us a little mound where we could pitch off the mound. And hell, we had us a baseball team. And the blacks lived in the 800 block of 24th Street. We lived in 1100 block. And we went down and found some blacks down there that gathered them up a baseball team. And we played them. Of course, they beat our ass like a drum. But
Where'd you go to school? Where'd you go to junior high and high school? What were the names of
I went to Love Elementary. And then when we moved to 24th Street, I went to Helms. I started at Helms in the 5th grade, and then from there went to Hamilton Junior High, and then I went to Reagan High School. Went to the 10th grade, through the 10th. Well, actually, half of the 10th grade.
And then what'd you do?
Well, I played hooky, and my father caught me, and we had a big battle at the house about that. And, of course, I was pretty hard-headed, naturally. I said, you know, I'll find me a damn job. Well, if you find your job, you got to pay rent. I said, I don't give a damn about that. I pay rent. So sure enough, I found me a job, and I paid $10 a week, room and board. And I stayed there until me and Rita got married. I was 20 years old. Had to have my mother sign for me to get a marriage license. That was a big kick in the butt.
Tell me how you met Mom.
I had a friend. His name was Sherwood Donahoe. Sherwood had a car. I didn't have a car at that time. And he was dating Rita's cousin, Helen. And one Saturday, he says, hey, he says, and he and I kind of ran around together, and he had a friend, not a friend, his cousin, John Bennett, dated a girl who lived down the street from me. And I dated this girl's sister. And that's how we got to know each other. And he said, Helen's cousin's having a party, a birthday party. He said, would you like to go? I said, well, you know, why not? So I went, and I swear I fell in love. It's amazing. I mean, when I seen her, and you know, I mean, she had all the things that I liked, and I fell in love. But we had a tough time. We went together for 5 years, fighting and fussing, and her dating other people, me dating other people, and all that kind of junk. And she dated an old boy, and this is a little bit of a story in a way. She dated an old boy that was in the National Guard with me. And he came over to me one time, and he says, hey, this was when we were at one of these 2-week summer camps. He came to me, and he says, it was Jimmy Sessler. I'll never forget him. He says, this girl that you've been dating, said, she's my girlfriend, and indicated to me that, you know, you're off limits to that, and so on. I said, well, tell you what, I said, I'll just let her decide that. And he said, well, you won't have to worry about that, I said, because I'll meet you out in the parking lot. Me and Garcia. And Garcia was a boxer, heavyweight Golden Glove boxer. But I also had a friend too. And so I told him, I said, well, I'll tell you what you do, big boy. Just come on out there in the lot. And I said, me and Prooch will meet you and Garcia out there. And this guy Prooch was like 6'7", and weighed about 250. And he and I was tight. I mean, in fact, he was a Polak, say, and they called him Big Polak, and they called me Little Polak. And guess what? When we got out to the lot, nobody showed up, which I was glad, but anyway. So when I got home, I called Rita and I said, let me tell you something. I want to date you and I want to go with you and this, that, and the other. But if you ever date him again, kiss me goodbye. Because I'll not be around. And don't call me. So that was the end of him. Thank goodness.
So, when did you and Mom get married?
September the 7th, 1957.
And tell me about your wedding.
Great wedding. Elwood and Polly seen to the wedding, and they did everything that they could afford to do. It was very, very nice. Not everything they could afford to do. They probably did more than they could afford to do, actually. My brother Ronnie was my best man, and Marlene was a bridesmaid, and I guess there were several others. That part gets a little foggy with me, but I will say this. Marlene and George Weson had a brand new 1957 Chevrolet, yellow, that they let us drive away from the wedding with, We got back home to get our car so that, it wasn't all screwed up. But there was cans tied to the damn thing anyway, which made me mad, but...
Did y'all go on a honeymoon?
Okay. We left to go on, we were going to go to Galveston. Okay. Something happened to the generator on the car. So we wound up at my father's shop to get the generator fixed. Well, he fixed the generator, and I'll never forget, and you gotta understand, we were pretty poor, because I left home with a brown sack and my underwear in it. Actually, it's about all I had, okay? And my father wrote me a $35 check as a wedding present. Be honest with you, I felt like it was 100. I mean, because I knew damn good and well that it was all he could afford to give me. Plus, he fixed my car. And because of the time of the day and all that, instead of going to Galveston, we drove out 45 and we went to a motel. And I want to say that the name of it was the Trade Wind. Not a biggie, but what the hell. And spent the night. And It's probably where Karen came along.
When did y'all move to LaPorte?
In 1958. We moved to LaPorte in June of 58. It was shortly after Karen was born. I actually started work for J. Marks Chevrolet in May of 1958.
And where did y'all live?
I finally found a place on Virginia. And I want to say, let's see, I'm trying to remember. It was the 300 block, if I remember right. It might have been the 400 block of Virginia. Well, wait a minute. Let's see. What is this block here? 5? Okay, then it was the 600 block.
And then y'all moved to.
We left. I got mad at the old lady that was renting to us there, and we moved to Ioway Street in the 400 block of Ioway. And we lived there for a couple of years. And then we finally bought a place at 511 San Jacinto. We lived there for 12 years. And let's see, Janet was born there, Larry was born there, and you were born there.
And then y'all bought our house. Who'd you buy it from? And
Okay, and then we
how
bought.
much did you spend?
Okay, we bought the house from the Lewises at 211 South First, and I'm trying to remember. We not only bought our house, but we bought the house next door. We bought the garage apartment, and we bought 2 lots, and the total amount was $23,000. I want to say.
Is that a lot of money?
Oh, I thought it was astronomical. Our house payment was. Our total payment was $229 a month, and I didn't know how we was going to make it.
See what else? Well, I think that's about it. But let me ask you this: do you have anything that you anything you just want to say, like that you would want your grandkids to remember you by?
I would hope to think that I've been some sort of an example, and that's it.
Heck yeah. I think you've been pretty good today.
You know.